Have you ever set a goal for yourself only to give up on it soon after? Setting goals is easy, but actually achieving them can be really, really hard. One study found that 2/3 of people give up on their New Year's resolutions within just 1 month of setting the goal for themselves. We often end up setting the same goals year after year after year. We want to change, but change is a constant journey of striving to create the life that you want. It's not meant to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. Let's work on breaking that cycle. If you're new here, my name's Izzy. I'm a Cambridge graduate and a doctor working in London. In this video, we'll talk about how to stop letting down your goals and actually start living the life that you want. I'm unfortunately very familiar with how it feels to set a goal and not achieve it. Just last year, I set myself the goal of achieving an HSK 5 level of proficiency in Chinese, while I was also studying for my final exams at Cambridge Medical School, making these YouTube videos, and then at some point started full-time work as a doctor in London. At the outset of the goal, I was so full of energy and confidence that I could achieve this, but as time went on, I found my motivation and consistency slipping, and I just ended up feeling really overwhelmed and unable to ultimately achieve the goal that I had set out for myself. It wasn't until I did some research into the psychology of goal pursuit and motivation and did some experimenting with different evidence-based strategies that I finally felt like I got on track with making solid, measurable progress towards my goal. Today, I want to share these 7 tried and tested strategies to hopefully help you achieve your own goals. I'll add both links to studies and also timestamps below, so feel free to check them out or jump ahead to the bits that interest you. The first 2 strategies are in terms of goal setting principles. The first strategy is to be very specific and also realistic with your goal setting. Rather than setting a broad, ambiguous goal like learning a language, try something more specific, like specifically saying, I want to achieve a B2 level in French by the end of the year. The second crucial part of this is to make sure this is actually achievable and realistic given your current circumstances. This is a huge mistake that I made while I was trying to achieve my HSK 5 level of Chinese last year, where I wasn't actually realistic given that I was so busy with my final exams, with starting a new job, and also making YouTube videos. It was also kind of wishful thinking to think I could learn 1,300 new Chinese characters and be able to use them in any context and all the speaking and listening, etc. We won't get into all of that, but anyway, as tempting as it is to be ambitious, we also need to be realistic and pragmatic. The role of visualization in achieving our goals is actually so interesting, and there's so much more to it that I could talk about here. If you're interested in learning more about how to make our goals crystal clear as opposed to having more vague, broad ones, Brian Tracy goes into much more detail about this in his book Goals. I read the short form summary where they provide a bit of extra analysis and some more details and extra information. If you're interested in trying out short form, you can get a free trial and also a 20% discount with my link below. The second strategy is a sprint breakdown and also tracking your goals. Once you've decided on your goals, creating a plan and then tracking your progress over time is essential to being able to stay motivated and consistent. There are 2 parts to this. Firstly, breaking the larger goal into smaller, more manageable chunks, and then secondly, creating a timeline for when you want to accomplish each of these steps by. This way, you can see your progress over time with each sprint, make adjustments as needed, and also by breaking it down, the overall goal feels less daunting because you can see actually each of these steps is achievable. To track your progress, you can use a journal or a planner, Notion, Excel sheet, etc. There's lots of ways to do it. For me personally, I use a combination of my bullet journal, my Notion setup, and also Excel spreadsheets to track all these various different goals that I have, depending on what they are and what kind of metrics there are. For example, if your goal is to run a marathon, let's say, which is a bit of a crazy goal, but fair enough, some people do have that goal, you might want to start by first running a 5k and then maybe a 10k, and then building up slowly until you can finally do that marathon. This will help you to build that momentum and stay motivated. I've actually made an entire video on goal setting principles and how to set goals to actually achieve them, so you might want to check that out over, I think it's over here. Yeah, over here. By setting goals more intelligently, you have a clear and realistic target to work towards. Now we've covered the basics, let's talk a bit more about some unconventional strategies. Tip number 3 is actually a mindset shift more than anything, and it's this idea of not failing with abandon. We as humans, you and me, are fundamentally imperfect, and there are times that we're going to fall short of our goal or not be able to fulfill what we set out to do. For example, one unhelpful thought process that I would have last year is, oh, it's already 9 p.m. and I was hoping hoping to do 2 hours of Chinese study in the evening, but now I'm only going to be able to do maybe 45 minutes at a stretch because I want to make sure that I can go to bed on time as I have placement in the morning. So then I'd be like, oh, I can only do 45 minutes. My goal was 2 hours. I may as well give up now because I've already failed at this aim that I had. But obviously when you think about that, that's actually unhelpful thinking, because in those 45 minutes, I could have made at least a little bit of progress. And so instead of failing with abandon and completely giving up on even trying to meet my goal, I could instead be like, you know what, I have the 45 minutes. This is where we are now. Let's try to make the most of this situation. Another example is, let's say you had set a goal to go to bed by 11 p.m. so that you could get enough sleep and feel rested for the next day. And then you notice that, oh, the time slipped past and now it's 11:05. Instead of failing with abandon and being like, oh, well, I'm just going to continue this Netflix binge, you can actually think, okay, no, I haven't quite met my goal, but this is as close as I'm gonna get. Let's start getting ready for bed now. So what I learned last year was that instead of getting into this negative cycle of thinking, oh, I've partially failed, I may as well fully fail, instead we can try to not be so hard on ourselves and know that if we slip up, that's normal, that's part of the process. Just pick yourself up and keep going. When we encounter obstacles or setbacks, we can just remind ourselves of the progress that we've already made and decide on the next best steps from here that we can take. Remember that setbacks and failures are a natural part of the journey and are a sign that we are really striving and pushing ourselves. The fourth strategy is visualization in order to combat delayed discounting. One big issue with setting long-term goals is that our brains are literally hardwired to prioritize short-term instant gratification. That's why scrolling on social media or eating loads of sweets is still really addictive, even though we know deep down that we'll probably feel a bit groggy and sluggish after doing it. These long-term goals can feel hard to achieve because of a psychological phenomenon known as delayed discounting, which essentially means that goals feel less rewarding to work towards when they exist further out into the future. Emily Balcetis did a study into long-term goal pursuit, focusing on participants who wanted to save more money for the future. They divided participants into a first group who were simply asked to think about how their future selves would feel about having more money saved in the bank, versus a second group who were actually instead shown a photo of themselves which had been digitally edited, essentially with like an Instagram filter or something like that, to make themselves look 30 to 40 years older. And they found that that second group, who had been asked to look at this photo of themselves 30 to 40 years in the future, were much more likely to actually achieve and pursue their goal. It seems like the visual system in this way can act almost like a bridge to counteract this delayed discounting. And the visual system is really powerful in that seeing an image of ourselves in the future is much more emotionally activating than simply thinking about how we may feel at some point. Those emotions that you'd feel when you look at a photo, even though it's edited, of your future self, are more able to translate into motivation in the here and now. There are various apps that you can use to actually edit your face to look this way. There are some filters on Instagram. You can also use an app called Face App, or there's loads more on the App Store. I'll link down below some tools that you can use to create pictures of yourself that look old. The fifth evidence-based strategy is to write it down. Dr. Gail Matthews did a study on goal pursuit where they divided participants into 5 groups, ranging from group 1, where they were simply asked to think about their goal, all the way down to group 5, who were asked to write down their goal, decide on some action commitments, find an accountability buddy, and then also set up a weekly accountability check-in to see if they're staying on track with the goal. The results showed that all the groups that wrote down their goal were significantly more likely to achieve their goal and felt on average 64% satisfied with their goal success, compared to the group who had all these unwritten goals, who only felt 43% satisfied with their goal success. Literally just the act of sitting down and writing down your goals in maybe a bullet journal or a Notion page can have such a huge impact on whether or not we're actually going to be able to achieve them. So even if you haven't written down your goals already, this is your cue to sit down right now and write them down. In my bullet journal, I have dedicated pages to each of my main goals. Another great result from this study by Dr. Gail Matthews was that group 5, who actually wrote down their goals, set action commitments, found an accountability buddy, and had weekly check-ins with their accountability buddy, were the most likely of all groups to succeed at their goal, and on average rated themselves as 76% satisfied with their goal success. This brings us nicely onto point number 6, which is accountability and community. TLDR, find an accountability buddy. This could be a close friend, a family member, your partner, even just a stranger on the internet. An accountability buddy can make all the difference and give you the guidance, support, and just the accountability that you need. For me personally, at the start of my YouTube journey, I met 2 friends, Ruri and Matt, that, I'll link their channels down below, who were my accountability buddies for YouTube, and every week we'd have a check-in and encourage each other to post a video and level up on our videos. For my Chinese learning, my sister is my accountability buddy, and then we have check-ins on how things are going and just motivate each other essentially. Having a support system like this can really make all the difference. I've noticed a huge difference just completely anecdotally when I don't have an accountability buddy versus when I do. Surrounding yourself with people who encourage and support you and cheer you on is literally a game changer. And you could even consider joining a group or club around the topic of interest that your goal is in, so that you can connect with people who share the same interest as you. Overall, the results of Dr. Matthews' study show the real value of sitting down to write down your goals, setting action commitments, finding an accountability buddy, and setting up weekly accountability calls or check-ins. The seventh and final tip is visual sparseness. One psychological trick that department stores use is to absolutely overload your visual sensors with so many inputs, so many items on the shelves, so many flashing billboards with advertisements and music and sound. This is because essentially this visual crowding leads to cognitive distraction, and when maybe we went to the store to buy one specific item, let's say you wanted to buy some pasta, you end up getting distracted and buying even more stuff, even stuff that you didn't even need or want. The same thing applies when we're pursuing goals. If our visual and cognitive space is cluttered with distractions, this adds cognitive friction and can distract us away from a focused goal pursuit. Having a clear space really genuinely does help to have a clear mind, and this is backed up by studies. So before you start working on a goal, consider just spending 5 minutes of your time to clear up the space so that you can really get into a genuine level of focus. I hope these 7 tips help you to stay consistent and motivated towards your goals. Let me know down in the comments what goals you guys have and how you're going about achieving them. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'll like this video over here where I talk about the evidence behind setting goals and how we can set goals to optimize for being able to actually achieve them. I also include a free Notion template and other resources, so feel free to check that out over there if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching, take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!